Martha, maybe it's none of my business, but I don't think it's wise you keeping that brooch around the house the way you do. Emily, explain to your mother about these valuable things. They ought to be in a bank vault.
Is that what you came to tell us?
But I like having it here, Henry. Owning it in a bank vault isn't really owning it. It's wearing it that gives me pleasure.
The orchard, Henry. Is Sam Wilkins giving it to me?
This is Talkback. Our drama for this program is called The Apple Orchard. Our guest is Dr. Maud Jensen, who for many years has been a Methodist missionary in Korea. Later, Mr. Merle Emery and Dr. Ross Snyder will be asking Dr. Jensen questions raised by our play.
Jonathan, you know I was Sam Wilkins' lawyer. And when he died, it was up to me to take care of the things that he mentioned in his will.
The apple orchard?
That's right.
Well, he always knew I wanted it.
I know he did. And that's why he made special mention of it in his will. You know all his property's being sold.
Yes, we heard about that. The poor man dying and not leaving any kin.
Yes, Martha, maybe it's none of my business, but I don't think it's wise you keeping that brooch around the house the way you do. Emily, explain to your mother about these valuable things. They ought to be in a bank vault.
Is that what you came to tell us?
But I like having it here, Henry. Owning it in a bank vault isn't really owning it. It's wearing it that gives me pleasure.
The orchard, Henry. Is Sam Wilkins giving it to me?
He's not giving anything, Jonathan. He's selling the orchard like the rest. But he's giving you first chance to buy it.
Why?
His will gives you a 1-week option to buy the orchard. 1 week from tonight. The down payment on the option is $2,000.
$2,000 down in just a week?
I'm sorry, Jonathan, but that's the price he set. He put it in his will, so it's got to be that way. I hate to say this, Jonathan, but if you don't exercise your option, I can find 10 buyers just like that.
No.
Frankly, I wondered whether you had that much. The farm's mortgaged to the hilt, isn't it?
Yes, Well, I can get it. Of course I can get it. I've lived here almost all my life, Henry, and I know a lot of people, so I can get it all right.
Why don't you talk to him, Mother? He's making himself sick, and an apple orchard just isn't worth it. It's been almost a week now. He's been running around trying to borrow money. People are talking and laughing behind his back.
Emily!
It's all right, Mother. Nothing happened.
How could you be so careless?
Well, it was an accident.
I told you that my mother gave me this, and
I'm sorry, Mother. I know how much it means to you. Oh, don't be upset. The brooch is all right.
Oh, I'm not upset about the brooch. It's everything else. I didn't mean to flare up like that.
I remember that brooch ever since I was a little girl.
Did I ever tell you about when your father first brought me here to his farm to live? How standoffish people were?
Yes, Mother.
I'll never forget that social we went to. It was the first one, and I was so frightened. People weren't friendly at all. Then they saw this brooch. I could see them whispering about me across the room and looking at me. And gradually a few people began to come over and talk to me. And they weren't standoffish anymore. Oh, your father was so pleased.
But it's you they like, Mother.
Emily, if I tell you something, will you promise not to tell your father?
But if you want me to.
Do you remember last year when I spent that week in the city? Well, I had my brooch with me, and I decided to get it appraised. I went right up to the door of the jewelry store, but I didn't go in. I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
Well, I was afraid that maybe my mother had made up that story about the brooch being worth a lot of money. And I was afraid that maybe the diamonds weren't diamonds at all.
Oh, Mother, that's silly.
Well, I didn't want to find out if they weren't. I didn't want to know about it, and I didn't want anyone else to know either. Emily, do you think I'm foolish?
I went everywhere, Henry. People have known almost all my life. Well, they'd lend me the money, some of them, but they don't have it either. The orchard's important to me, Henry. Maybe a month more.
I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about that. I couldn't give you an extension even if I wanted to because the law says that I can't. I'm sorry, Jonathan, but 5 o'clock today, your option's up. And it's almost noon now.
Jonathan, I didn't hear you come in.
Turn me down, Martha.
Oh, no.
Yep, this is the last day. No more days after today. Martha, you've always been my strength.
Oh, don't say that.
The one time, the only time I showed any strength was when I left my pa's farm, this farm, to work in the city. Even not long ago, all I wanted was to earn enough money to maybe buy the Wilkins orchard.
Jonathan, have you ever been sorry you married me?
But Martha...
Well, it was because of me that you didn't have a chance to earn that money. We got married and came back here to live.
Martha, I've never been sorry 1 minute. Not 1 minute. You see that hill out there?
Yes.
When I was a boy, I used to climb up on that hill just to look down on the Wilkins orchard. Used to sit there for hours just dreaming about owning it. Yeah, my pa'd find me and tan me. Said I'd never get anywhere just dreaming, not working. Well, I've worked. I worked hard. I never got anywhere. I never amounted to anything.
Oh, you have?
I always felt that someday that orchard would be mine, and then it would amount to something. I'd have done something. Now I won't even have that. Oh, if I was strong like you.
I'm not strong, Jonathan. I've always depended on you. Jonathan, that orchard means everything to you, doesn't it? Jonathan?
Yeah?
I want you to have that orchard.
But Martha...
You can sell that and make a down payment. Well, you better get on back to town. I've got to help Emily with dinner.
Martha, where's your mother?
She went right through the kitchen and out the back door. Is there anything wrong, Dad? Well, maybe I'll have to go see.
No, Emily, don't bother. I changed my mind. I don't want to talk to her.
She's worried about you, Dad.
I know.
I'm worried, too. You wanted to buy that orchard so badly.
I'm going to buy it, Emily. I've got a way.
Mother's brooch. That's what you've got in your pocket, her diamond brooch. Oh, how could you take it, Dad?
Why didn't she? Gave it to me.
Well, you can't do it. You can't sell Mother's brooch to buy that orchard.
I've got to do it. I'll lose the orchard if I don't.
Well, then lose it.
Emily, it isn't just that it's an apple orchard. Sure, it's good land, it'll pay, but it's more than that. It's a dream. Well, you can't tell a man not when he can finally reach out and grab that dream. You can't tell him lose it.
Dad.
This is just a brooch, diamonds and whatever. It's just a piece of jewelry.
Oh, no, it isn't. It's a part of Mother's heart, almost. And owning it, being able to wear it, she feels that's what gives her a standing in town.
But that's not so. It's not this brooch that makes people like her. It's her.
But it's the brooch she has the faith in. It's Mother's dream, almost, like the orchard is yours. What you're doing, Dad, is selling her dream so you can buy yours.
But she wanted me to have it. I can't give up my chance, Emily.
Dad.
No, I can't give it up. I'm going to sell the brooch.
Well, suppose you can't.
This sure is a pretty piece, Jonathan. I'm surprised that Martha's selling it.
Maybe the jeweler's not coming. Maybe I ought to go and see him.
Oh, relax. He'll be here in a minute. Got the deed all ready. Now, when Baxter tells you how much he'll give you for the brooch, oh, here he is now. Come on in.
Hello, Henry. Mr. Harker. Well, what's it all about? My nephew's taking care of the store. I don't want to leave him alone too long.
You're still buying jewelry, aren't you?
Sure, if anybody's got it to sell. Say, that's your wife's, isn't it?
Yes, it's Martha's.
I heard a lot about this brooch from my wife. Never did see it before, though. This what you're selling?
Yes?
You know something, Henry? More people are selling heirlooms now. I don't know why. Maybe business is bad. Ready cash isn't easy to come by. I put my glass in one of these pockets. I can't really tell how much any of these things are worth until I get a good look at them. Ah, there it is. I knew I had it. It's funny how people think they love something, then they find they can give it up when they have to. Just the other day... What's the matter?
I changed my mind. I'm not selling it.
What about your option?
I don't care about the option. Thank you. You've been a big help. A real help. I thank you.
What happened to him?
Beats me.
Crazy. That's all he is. Just plain crazy.
What a beautiful place we have to start. Mrs. Jensen, what did happen to Jonathan?
That's rather a broad question, the one about which the whole picture revolves. In the end, it's the question that's asked and that needs to be answered, of course. He discovered something more valuable than the apple orchard.
The cue is when the jeweler says it's funny how people who think they have something they love can give it up when they have to. This seemed to do something to Jonathan. What did it do to him, do you think?
It was said, of course, after he had made his decision. Jonathan had suddenly discovered that dreams may be more valuable than realities, that a dream as an ideal may mean more than its realization, and that his love for his wife and for others and their needs and desires meant more than his own, the fulfillment of his own dream. I think eventually what he saw was that the apple orchard was no longer the supreme value in life, that he had made it.
It isn't just the fact that I'm a man, that I was rooting all the way through his problem here, that the good solid core of Jonathan was going to come out and really assert itself after a while.
It seems to me there was evidence in the story as we went along that in the end he should discover the truth, because they quite evidently had had a satisfactory family life. They had developed concern for one another. The daughter showed that in her concern for the mother and for the father, although perhaps it was weighted on the mother's side. They had seen other values. And it's just at a time like that, sometimes the temptation becomes all the greater to accept a new value as important, when it really isn't so important.
Is there ever a time when material possessions are permanently satisfying, do you think?
I don't think there ever is a time. We all know people who are possessed of material things, who have almost everything, whether it's money or other kinds of possessions that one could want, and life is not satisfactory for them. Often it seems worse for them than it is for those who have very little in the material sense.
Well, what do you think of this, that it wasn't until Jonathan saw that his wife was human, frail, fragile. You see, he said to her, "You've been strong all your life." And apparently after she gave him the brooch and then went on out, he commenced to no longer see her merely as somebody who was strong, that he had kind of loved all his life. But the real depth of his love for her didn't come till he saw she too was human, weak, subject to sorrow and suffering.
And that she needed him, but that she was willing to give up everything for him, the things to which she had clung almost in place of him. He suddenly realized that he meant more to her, that he was stronger than the brooch had been in her life. It had meant everything. He did see clearly that her success, if you can call it that, as a neighbor and as a friend of people, was not due to the brooch, to which she attributed it, but to her own being. And I think probably that helped him see that his own success in life was not related to owning an apple orchard and realizing his dreams.
So I'm going to say you're saying there's really the birth of two people here again. They both,
I think so.
Husband and wife.
They've discovered a meaning in life that had escaped them before. They had perhaps had a certain realization of it, but not fully, not clearly, because they always kept something else in their hearts, this little idol type thing that meant something to them, until they realized that the other values were more important.
I really enjoyed very much when Jonathan came home, the way he played with his dog then. It seemed to me he said, in effect, I'm back at home in the world now.
We could certainly say that even if we didn't know what happened, whatever it was certainly good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm wondering in my mind why this took so long. These people who had lived a good, long, full life, certainly someplace along the road there had been another experience, such as this, that should have made them realize each other's strength. Why didn't it happen? Could this have anything to do with recognizing the will of God?
I think that might be, but it seems apparent from the story itself that there had never been such a crisis before. That is, the brooch had always been to the mother the one symbol of status in the community. Even with her own family, it gave her a sense of being someone in the family. She was worried about it, remember? She asked her husband, well, are you sorry you married me? This had been the thing that she felt she was bringing him, a chance for her to be someone in the community for his sake, and so on, because she had that brooch. He had wanted that apple orchard, had felt always that he was a failure because he had never had the opportunity. Opportunity to realize dreams does not always come early in life, and I think we can adopt an attitude that seems to cover a situation and seems to meet all the needs as long as we aren't faced with them. But when the chance comes to do a little something more or to get something that we have wanted, then sometimes it's hard to keep those values in line that we have felt we have known before.
I'd like to come at you quite personally, and you can reveal just as much of yourself as you would like to. It seems to me here essentially then, we've had these two people who have discovered now the meaning of life for them. Would you mind sharing with us, as you'd care to, some experiences in your life where the kind of the meaning of life broke through to you and you says, all right, now this is really it?
Of course, anyone who dedicates his life to the service of the church certainly feels at that time that he understands a meaning to life that requires more service than he can give
you mean,
otherwise.
for instance, at your ordination or when you were commissioned as a missionary or something?
Yes,
you had
when
a strong sense of
I
this?
went out long before they commissioned missionaries. I think back to that time.
Yes.
But, yes, and yet, no matter what service we're in, we still retain our own normal human characteristics. I mean, if we like red and green, we still like red and green. Or if we like music, we still like music. And we always want material things, I think even missionaries who give them up. However, we have faced very difficult years in the mission field. In Korea, twice we have faced evacuations that meant the loss of everything material.
And you feel at this point you did get clear of what you really valued?
In 1940 and again in 1950, values were put in such a light that they could not be misunderstood. When a person has to escape from a situation that may mean death or imprisonment, capture, that sort of thing, freedom, life itself become the important things, not the material things that are left behind. Twice I've walked out of my house leaving beds unmade, dishes unwashed, everything just as it is, left behind my wedding silver, my rugs, my pictures, the things that were of value to me, that had real meaning to me, because it was time for something more important than that. At one time, getting out the children. At the last evacuation in the Korean War in 1950, in 24 hours, my life changed completely from a happy home life with work to a life without work, because that work was wiped out, without home because the home was wiped out, without husband because my husband was captured in the war, without a country because we were evacuated from the country in which we lived and which we loved.
Yeah.
The people with whom we worked were left behind. All of this in 24 hours' time. It wasn't I only, all the other people, the other missionaries, and other people who were not missionaries, who perhaps did not lose the work and those things in the same way, but who had to leave behind at least their material possessions. I never heard anyone complain of all the women who were evacuated at that time. Their one concern was not just for themselves and their children, but for their husbands who were left behind. Aside from that, they were, I suppose later perhaps they missed a few of the things that they had had, but the real meanings of life become important at a time like that. I know that they became important to my husband, who was captured at that time, and to the other missionaries who were captured with him, for they had no material possessions. Everything was taken away from them. They were left with nothing that they could use or handle at all. In fact, for almost 3 years, he had no shoes. They did
almost
eventually
everything that most of us use to
yes.
tell us who we are and what we
there was
think.
nothing. Then the real things become important. And after his return from that 3-year period of internment, he told me many things about it, but particularly that at Christmas, for instance, the thing that meant most to them was not what they could get or gifts, but that they could sing a few Christmas carols quietly until the guards stopped them, that they could truly worship together. And one Christmas morning they woke and saw on the door of this hut they had built a Christmas tree drawn. It had been drawn by one of the Mohammedans, the Turkish Mohammedans who had been captured at the same time. This fellowship had come into the group, and this girl had tried to help with their Christmas. and had drawn this tree on the door with a crescent at the top instead of a star. She did the best she could.
Yes.
But the spiritual values were the things that were important. Material things meant nothing.
We might get an idea that there's something missing in the life of a person that depends so much on putting values on material things. I wonder how a good Christian relation could help to fill that void, or could it? If there is a need for something of this sort, if there's something missing in the life that causes this.
It must be that while we have things and everything that we want or need physically and materially, we forget part of the spiritual. It does take a certain amount of loss or suffering or sorrow, but we all face that. It may not be an internment in an enemy prison camp. It may not be an evacuation from a country. It may be the loss of a loved one in your family. It may be sickness. But things do happen. It may be the loss of a position that you wanted that someone else was able to get. These things make us consider values whether we wish to or not, and it's then that we see how little the other things mean to us, really.
You're saying in all of our lives there are these moments where if we really could be sensitive, we could be more aware of what we really do value.
I think so, and that does not mean that there should not be things, that there should not be material values, that we should not have them. The abundant life includes material values as well, but it also includes the spiritual, and that's where we slip so often. Even missionaries, we're constantly being reminded that we ought perhaps to have a little time of retreat to get back a little bit of spiritual force instead of all the busy things that we keep doing.
This is something like the rest of us. At the end of the church service, you sort of walk out feeling, well, at least I can make a good try again, and by about a week's time, you've kind of got the need of something else again.
We need a little more worship. We need it brought to our attention, yes.
Mrs. Jensen, do you by any chance get a parallel of the story of the 30 pieces of silver here? Do you think there's a possibility that Jonathan was actually selling his wife?
I had not thought of it in that way. Certainly, the father, the husband in this case, did not mean to sell out his wife.
No, but he was.
But he was willing to accept her sacrifice at first, but he couldn't carry it through.
Yeah.
There's nothing much wrong with him.
This discussion isn't finished until you have thought through to your satisfaction the questions which Dr. Jensen, Mr. Emery, and Dr. Snyder have been considering. Perhaps you will want to continue to think and talk about the issues which Talkback is raising. Talkback is a public service program presented by this station and the churches of your community. It was produced in cooperation with the National Council of Churches as a contribution of the Methodist Television Ministry.